Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of the Power Hour podcast. Today, we're joined by Mike Walmesly from recruitmenttraining.com. He is previously £1 million biller of his own accord, and since then, he's appeared in about 350 different videos. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, great to be joining you, Jeff. I think it's a fantastic initiative.
Right, a lot of people who are building businesses and who are looking to add people to their team. And one of the questions I always ask them is who's doing really well and why are they doing really well? How can we emulate your winners?
From a manager's viewpoint, a director's viewpoint, it's one less problem to think about. You know, the person's up and running, they're making money, now I'll focus on the next thing. But you know, the Japanese had it nailed, you know, many years ago. Do they call it Kanzai? I think it's continuous improvement.
But I do understand what you're saying, that if it's coming from your pocket and you're the one that's paying for it, you're paying it from yourself, a way to help them to actually benefit is to keep them accountable, not as a punishment, but as to say, I sent you this because I want you to do as well as you can. Let's see how you're implementing it in month one and Q1 and then Q2, and let's have a look back in a year and see if it's been worthwhile. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of the Power Hour podcast. Today, we're joined by Mike Walmesly from recruitmenttraining.com. He is previously £1 million biller of his own accord, and since then, he's appeared in about 350 different videos. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, great to be joining you, Jeff. I think it's a fantastic initiative.
Thank you very much. One thing that I've noticed very recently, and so I'd like to get straight into, if you don't mind, is that I know that you're the only business that do these like reality recruitment videos.
Yeah, well, I pioneered video training initially in the UK many years ago. Actually, I had 6 DVDs back then called How to Excel as a Recruiter, and we sold thousands of them all around the world, superseded now obviously by fresh material and online. But the big breakthrough for me has been reality recruitment, because a lot of training is perceived to be for rookies. And of course, rookies need foundational knowledge. You know, you've got to get them off the ground fast. But the biggest wins are with experienced recruiters. And so the reality recruitment videos, they're reenacted real conversations with candidates and recruiters, or recruiters and clients. And they're specifically aimed at upskilling experienced recruiters. So they're not online learning, by the way, they're actually management tools where managers can facilitate micro training sessions to improve one skill a week with every person in their team.
So how do they actually work?
Well, they're if you imagine the presenter comes on, you know, in this next clip, you'll see a recruiter calling a client to be met by the objection, we've got internal recruiters, let's see how they get on. And then you see the conversation happening, you know, with the recruiter and the person blocking the call. And then at a certain point, the presenter then says, I'd like you to now pause the video and explain what you would have done differently in this situation. I'll join you again in a moment. So essentially, it gives the experienced recruiter no excuse. You can't really say, well, I've been trained. You've actually got to use your brain and say, well, in that situation, this is what I would do. And the manager then facilitates that and exhausts the options from the individuals, and then presses play. And then a better way of doing it is then revealed. You know, and by default, Jeff, you'll know that just, you know, a manager working with their team and asking questions, you're going to get something good from it. They may even come up with a better idea than is in the videos, which is what you want, you know, improve one skill a week. Why would you not want to do that?
Yeah, and I think that's actually real coaching, isn't it? That's real coaching, because it's like there and then. Because as well, I think that from the manager's perspective, I know obviously this is aimed at the consultant, but from the manager's perspective, it's bloody hard to be on the phones at the same time and be listening to whoever's on the phone at the same time. And I've always personally found that it's been really helpful to be able to say, oh, don't say that, mate. Try and say this maybe, or say that in this way. Or what did they say that? In the back of my mind, in the back of like from the side of my face, I see that you was having a little bit of trouble on that one there, mate. What were they saying? But it's hard to actually concentrate and give a good level of service to whoever you're on the phone to and do that at the same time, which is one of the reasons why billing managers have got like the toughest gig. So
Oh,
it's nice to be able to view. Sorry?
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I was a managing director of a fairly, decent sized recruitment company. And the hardest job I ever had was as a billing manager. So you're pulled in every direction. And as a salesperson, your tendency is to look after your clients, obviously. So to then find some time to, improve people is difficult. I mean, I actually stumbled across this years ago, Jeff. I was going to, I had a team of 4 or 5 people, and I was going to Pret a Manger in London to buy a sandwich. And I've been giving myself the excuse, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to train and develop people, apart from, so-called on-the-job training, kicking an idea around every now and then. And it suddenly hit me, hold on, it takes me 30 minutes to go to Pret a Manger, queue up, buy the sandwich, chew it, eat it, come back. So what I'm going to do is have a learning lunch instead. And I'm going to replace the 30 minutes that, I was spending and my staff were also spending, and instead buy lunch and then facilitate a session. And it's such a simple thing to do. So every manager, you give excuses like I did, I'm too busy. But in reality, if you adopt the thinking I just shared, it's actually easy, and it takes 0 time. I rationalize it takes 0 time, because all I was doing was replacing the time of the cafe with, being in the room. There's a small cost associated with it to buy a few sandwiches, but the upside is enormous. I mean, if you've got 4 people in your team and you can improve 1 skill a week, in a year, you've got nearly 200 improvements.
Yeah, that is, I mean, I'm a big fan of incremental improvements as well, because I feel like because what happens with me, in all honesty, Mike, is that I've just learned that just now, right? That 30-minute track, and straight away I thought to myself, that's a bloody good idea, and I'm going to implement that, right? But
yeah.
Sorry?
So good for you. That's good.
Yeah. But what would happen is that what been my experience is that over a period of time, right, then I might not do that as regularly as I once did, because I've got other bright ideas, right? And so things always change and they're always evolving, and I'm replacing things. So I like the idea of doing 1 thing a week, because there's some things that I do that I've always done. Right? There's some things that I do that I'm always going to do because they're just ingrained in me. And those things usually have come quite slowly. They've come, I've dedicated a period of time, even if it's a week. A week's a week, isn't it? So, yeah, I think that, straight away off the bat, I've learned a couple of really good things there.
Well, if you think, what's the difference between someone billing millions and someone billing a few 100,000? And at face value, you've got 2 very intelligent, not very intelligent, you've got 2 reasonably intelligent people. You don't have to be super bright. You don't have to be Einstein to do recruitment. With good personality, good persuasive skills. But why is one billing 5 times more than the other? What is it? And I really think a key reason for that is opportunism. There's actually 40 different ways to find candidates without the web. So let's just remove LinkedIn, and we'll remove Google, and we'll remove the internet. Imagine a world without any of those tools anymore. There's actually 40 different things that opportunistic recruiters can do in conversations, take them to candidates. So how do you teach that? And to your point from earlier, the manager who's busy and on the phone themselves and billing, and they listen to one part of a conversation, and it's almost like, I'll throw a bone in, remember to do that next time. How do you teach opportunism? Well, one way to do it is to analyze call recordings. And I've done a lot of that. I've listened to call recordings from big billers sometimes who miss opportunities. It's incredible. There are so many people don't know some very simple techniques. For example, on the new business front, senior candidate tracking. Now, senior candidate tracking is a Trojan horse to win new business. If I'm interviewing a candidate who hires regularly, they're a managerial person, I'm going to qualify them through one interview question. And then I'm going to make a decision how much time I invest nurturing them to become my client. And by the way, the question is, let's say the person's name is John. John, one of the key things that employers look for in people at your level is the ability to build teams. Could you please tell me about the teams you've built over the years and how you went about doing that? Now, that's an interview question, and there's some merit in asking that to help you sell the candidate. But the underlying reason is if the candidate says, well, I hired 15 people last year and 8 contractors, the previous company I did blah, I'd be a fool not to stay in touch with that candidate, even if I couldn't place them. Now, that's not a difficult thing to do, but there is a strategy. So we built reality videos around opportunism, around the little things that the big billers do that, in my experience, listening to all these recorded calls, a lot of people aren't doing. And they're so easy. They really are.
And I really like that, because I speak to a lot of people every day, right? A lot of people who are building businesses and who are looking to add people to their team. And one of the questions I always ask them is, who's doing really well and why are they doing really well? How can we emulate your winners, right? Because everyone's winners, for some reason, there's always like stuff that goes through the middle, but there's loads of different nuances that you'll find that do well in some businesses and not so well in other businesses. And a lot of the time they'll say, and that's not all the time, but a lot of the time they'll come back and they'll say something like, oh, that's just stuff you can't teach. It's stuff you can't teach, Jeff. It's just stuff that they're just switched on, mate. When they're on the phone, they can pick up opportunities and they can run with it. And it's about getting that kind of like someone who's got that commercial awareness, and you can't teach it. And I always do think to myself, you can. You are not. I've got multiple experiences of people who I've dealt with throughout their career who are none too smart at the beginning and have gone on to be really, really good recruiters. It's because they've been shown that. And I feel like this is a really good tool, and it answers that question of can I get this person to where they want to go? Are they going to be able to spot these things? Because as you say, like, that's just something you learn. You learn that. So some people don't need to be taught that. I do agree. Some people just instantly going to think, hang on a minute, this geezer's going to be useful to me further down the line because he's a manager and I can place him. And some people's desks are so they become rainmakers. So they're placing all the heads of and C-level people, and then obviously they're going back into them and saying, is there a chance you can help one of my colleagues out there looking to place this person, etc. And that's a natural gig. But as you say, we can all kind of do that, can't we? We can all do that.
Totally, it's absolutely teachable. In fact, I was kind of thinking then, as you said that, it's almost an insult for the manager to say to the recruiter or to think about the recruiter that you can't train that. Of course you can. Absolutely you can. A lot of selling is about questioning, as you know. So ask better questions. Can you teach someone to ask better questions? And of course you can. So as to how quick thinking the person is and how they can pivot if the question goes badly, that's a personality thing. That's an intelligence thing. So, but if you select and hire good people, absolutely. And the people who are so-called naturals, you can get so much more out of these people. You really can. So to go back to that 40 ways to find candidates without the web, in your experience, Jeff, how many recruiters have you interviewed over the years in your business? And if you said to them, could you write down 10 ways to find candidates without the web? No LinkedIn, no Google, no internet. I mean, most people, in my experience, because I've done events with 100 people there, 200 people, and I've done that exercise, pretty much everyone struggles. But there are 40 different little techniques that can take you to candidates. I mean, some of them are iterations of referrals. Some of them are, one, which is blindingly simple, but I'm going to say it anyway, is multiple referrals. I've seen this happen in calls. I've listened to calls. And if people watching this think, oh, that's too easy. Well, it is easy. Referrals, okay. Firstly, people don't ask. If I speak to 20 candidates, I'm going to ask for referrals 19 times minimum. It's in my DNA. to do it. Okay. So if other people only ask 4 or 5 times, of course, I've got straight away 4 or 5 times more opportunities than they have. The only time that I don't ask, by the way, is if it's inappropriate for some reason or other. You know, the conversation's gone badly or something, and I might decide not to. But that's a choice, yeah. But multiple referrals. I've listened to calls. Lots of people, number one, don't ask. Secondly, they ask in an ineffective way, or they offer a referral bonus. And referral bonuses are actually, they work less than skill and expertise. And thirdly, the ones that do get a referral celebrate too soon. They get one referral, thanks very much, and they're off. You know, in one memorable example, I got 10 referrals in one phone call, you know, and that's because I understand the value of the question. You know, thank you, John. I appreciate your help. By the way, who else might you know for the position? You know, and these things are not difficult to do. So, you know, once you've got that extra bit of zap, and you appreciate there's another question to ask or another question to ask, and you get a taste for success, you've got it, and you're at the races then. And that's why I think the experienced recruiter gets it a little bit faster, but they don't get trained that much. You know, I've actually brought in a new phrase relatively recently, and I'm building it into induction now. There is no such thing as I've been trained. I'm actually getting it out of the way. This is a journey to mastery. It never ends.
Oh, I love that. I really
You know,
like
you sharpen the saw all the time.
A journey to mastery. That's, I mean, anyone who wants a career in recruitment is probably going to enjoy that term, I would say.
Yeah, and why would you not? You know, if you're a sports person, it's a journey to being world class, isn't it? To being the best in the world. If you're talented enough in sport, why is it any different in our job? Why is it people saying I've been trained? I mean, Ronaldo wouldn't say I've been trained, would he? You know, the footballer. It's like he's relentless. Even at, what is he, 38 now?
And he banged in 43 goals this season,
Yeah.
I think it was. But yeah, so because I was actually watching a program on the TV the other day called Hard Knocks. It's about the NFL, right? And they follow the teams through their journey of their, like, they come in around halfway through the season and they follow them through to fruition. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, these people spend the majority of their time improving themselves, and then they've got their game once a week. So they're at work every day. They're at work. They're literally sat in offices, in desks with screens in front of them, looking at people's plays and studying things. And they're out on the field and they're drilling and going over the same thing again, like what we would do. So, for instance, like we would probably relate that to, right, listen, there's 40 different ways. There's 40 different ways to get a candidate. Let's get really good at each one of them. And then next year, let's do the same thing again so we get a little bit better at each one of them. And then, you know, and whatnot, whatever we're going to do. But the point I'm trying to make is that they're kind of 90% training and 10% doing, which where as an industry, and me included in this, are probably 99% doing and 1% training. Do you think that there's anything to that, or do you think that was just like a bit of a fleeting thought that I had, and it's just...
No, I think it's right. I think it's almost like, from a manager's viewpoint, a director's viewpoint, it's one less problem to think about. You know, the person's up and running, they're making money, now I'll focus on the next thing. But, you know, the Japanese had it nailed, you know, many, many years ago. Do they call it Kansai? I think it's continuous improvement. Whatever that name is, you know, continuous improvement. Another thing that, you know, perplexes me a little bit as a, you know, training professional for many years, I've heard the phrase refresher. That's a good refresher. And I understand why people say it, but in my mind, I've started to think about this. It's like somebody came on one of my courses, I think it was objection handling, and they got some great value from it. They were very happy. 3 years later, they came on the same course. Okay. And I you know, I was a younger trainer then. I was a bit, it's like, what are they going to get from this training session? You know, they've already been here in the past. Anyway, 10 pages of notes at the end of it. And I said, you know, what did you get from today? And they showed me the notes. And then they said, good refresher, Mike, really good refresher. So that's fine. And then I'm thinking, what they really mean is, I came 3 years ago, I implemented some things, but I didn't implement everything. And it took 3 years and more money and more spend. And think of all the opportunity cost of not having those techniques implemented for the previous 3 years. And they called it a refresher. So it really means when you say, you know, it's a refresher, it means that you've been trained on it before, but you didn't implement. So you've not achieved mastery, which I think is the point from earlier. So, you know, improvement's got to be relentless. That's why I'm so excited about the reality recruitment videos. You know, we've got 820 recruiter and manager videos now, in a branded learning management system that can be adapted and tailored to any business. Add your own content, manage your live training, manage external trainers, put YouTube videos in, documents, articles, anything you wish, tailor it, you know, totally to your business. And we create about 15 new videos a month, every month, for people who work with us. And the realities are the jewel in the crown now. They're very special because of what we're talking about. It's those improve one thing. And I think another big thing about training, Jeff, is holding people to account. So back then, when I told you the story about the people with the refresher, they came to an open course. So clearly I'm not holding them to account. They paid the money and they come to the course and they got value and then they came again. But in our software, we've created learning accountability software. It's absolutely crucial. And there are so many people, and I bet you there's people watching this podcast now listening, who have spent money on a trainer, anybody. Let's assume the person is good at what they do. You know, the person comes back to the office, the boss says, how'd you get on? Oh, it's excellent, really good trainer. I've got 10 pages of notes. And the director's thinking, good, you know, good spend, you know, worthwhile spending my money there. 3 months later, they're thinking, why did I spend that money? Nothing's changed. And the single biggest reason for that is lack of learning accountability. If you want to drive knowledge into a business, you know, it takes a little bit of time and you might need to do it again. Repetition is the mother of learning is a well-worn phrase in the, you know, learning world. It's an ancient phrase and it's true, you know, going back and double checking things and making sure it's being done. But learning accountability in its simplest term could be the managing director spends the money on the live trainer or the video training, and then says, I'd like you to type up your notes, proving to my satisfaction in-depth understanding of everything that you've been taught on that course so that we can reuse it for the rest of the team. But of course, you're demonstrating to me that you're implementing the things that you have been taught. Now, how many people do that? The answer is not many. So we built learning accountability into our learning management software, and now you've got it by default on autopilot. And the single biggest thing from it is it makes people work harder. And, you know, with the best will in the world, if you watch a YouTube video, and let's face it, most of us do nowadays, whether it's for educational purposes or for fun, how much of it do you remember? How much of the live training that you do remember when you pay for a live course? But if you typed your notes up, now you're starting to remember more. You're starting to think about the material. You're starting to work it. And you're starting to think, okay, well, the trainer said it like that. That's not my personality style. So I'm going to adapt it like this. And you get a much greater bang for your buck if you have learning accountability.
Yeah, I think that as well. It's I'm a big believer on like you keep what you've got by giving it away. And so if you come back to the office and you can say to someone, I've just learned this, and this is how you do this, and this, it just compounds it in my mind. I've just learned how to do this. I think it's a good idea. I'm showing someone else how to do it as well. And so again, that accountability is good. And it's good if you can, like something you mentioned about you can share it with the team, for instance. I feel like if it's shared, because the thing is that I can always hazard a guess for others, but I can always talk from my own personal experience. And if I find that something's making my job easier or it's making me better at my job, I will continue to do it. That's it. And so having the hope to implement it comes from the training session, usually. As you come out of a training session and feel like, all right, I'm hopeful this is going to work, because hope is the key to it all. I'm not going to even bother if I've got no hope. So the hope comes first, and then the from the hope comes willingness to act. And then if success comes from the action, then guess what? I'm probably going to do that again and again and tell other people about it. But it's really good. I mean, I've not got a non-exec director, so I've not really got anyone to hold myself accountable to, which is something I'm probably going to look at this year. Maybe not, maybe, who knows, right? It's at the bottom of the resolution list. There's a big list, it's somewhere along the bottom, considered a Ned, right? But I do understand what you're saying, that if it's coming from your pocket and you're the one that's paying for it, you're paying it from yourself, a way to help them to actually benefit is to keep them accountable, not as a punishment, but as to say, I sent you this because I want you to do as well as you can. Let's see how you're implementing it in month one and Q1 and then Q2, and let's have a look back in a year and see if it's been worthwhile.
Yeah, you're so right. I love that phrase, by the way, from earlier. It's really nice. Sharing with other people is a powerful thing to do. But another really powerful management tool is catch people doing things right. And most managers catch people doing things wrong. And they're doing it for the right reasons. They're trying to put fires out. They're trying to stop problems from happening. And it's almost like on-the-job training, which isn't training. It's a bit of re-emphasis of a good point, or a bad point. You can feel henpecked as an individual. Mike, that was a great call, but remember to do blah, blah, blah next time. You think, oh, I can't seem to do anything right. Another way of doing it is to train reactively, i.e., if I see 2 or 3 people who had a clear opportunity to close for a client meeting but didn't do it, this week's training session is going to be on that point. I'm going to improve it reactively. So the weekly sessions for me were priceless, and I learned so much about my people by doing that. We got some incredible results.
And it's funny you say that, because this program I was talking about, the Hard Knocks, everything they do is very reactive, because they're going up against a particular team. So then they'll train around, oh, this guy's going to be a bit of a danger. We need to study him, and then we need to see how we're going to be able to, combat him and ultimately defeat him. And it's the same thing, isn't it? Really, because it's I still find this to be an extremely exhilarating job. I'm very, very much on desk. I really enjoy it, and I feel like I see it as like challenges and wins and losses, and that's how I sort of tally things up. And so for me, the sports analogy is a really good one. So to lead on from that, as I say, these guys are probably 90%, 95% training and 5% doing. Do you feel like there's a general rule of thumb for what a recruiter should be spending their time on training and doing on?
Well, you really want them billing as fast as possible, don't you? And you want to bring in money in. I mean, it's slightly different than sport, obviously. But I think get the induction and the onboarding right. Okay. Fast track knowledge into people. Really plan that out. So we help our clients with an onboarding planner, which includes the best of their content, live training, documents, articles, YouTube, anything, plus the best of our content. And that's obviously a sensible thing to do. Have the best of external and the best of internal, and put it all into one place. Then, if you want to reduce the time to bill and get people billing faster, hold them to account. So 2 ways to do that. Both of them work. One of them takes time from a director, one takes limited time. And the one that takes time and does work, I used to do an exam, a written exam. So 20 random questions. And the pass mark I set was 85%. And if you got less than that, you could retake it as a rookie. But if you failed twice, we parted company. And because the only reason anyone would fail twice is they don't work hard enough to learn the material. And you know that how important work ethic is in this job. So And that absolutely worked brilliantly, brilliantly. We really reduced the time to bill in our business significantly as a result of that. The problem was you needed someone like me on a Sunday evening with a glass of wine marking 6 exam papers, and each one takes 45 minutes or so to mark, so it's onerous in that sense. So the second way of doing it is through the learning accountability, where they've got to replay back every single thing they've learned, whether it's live training from the managing director or an external trainer. They've got to replay it back, in some kind of form of learning accountability. So if you can fast track people with a lot of knowledge, then you've got a good foundation. Right? From there on, I would say train weekly or even daily. Now, how do you fit that in? How does the manager train, senior candidate tracking, for example, when they've never done it themselves? Well, they can't really. Well, they can. They can use reality recruitment videos. So the manager can learn themselves, So because they're about 5 minutes each and they're interactive, they're not dry videos, they're interactive. They're a tool for managers, in which case you could run a daily training session if you wanted to, without it being, in any way a drain on time. So, yeah, I mean, whether you do a weekly training session or whether you do them short, scrum meetings or whatever that phrase is, where you just get the team together and, you do a quick session, one thing. But I think I talked earlier about catch people doing things right, but I never got to the end of that point, Jeff. Just to come back to that. Catch people doing things right is, I think you gave me the steer on this when you were talking about the situation. What was it when you talked about? Anyway, I can't remember the exact reason you gave me the steer on it. But if somebody makes a placement in the office, of course everyone's happy with that, yeah. But let me give you an example of catch people doing things right. So Johnny makes the placement. It's a 15 grand fee. Johnny, well done on the placement. How did you find the candidate? Oh, it was a peer reference, Mike. Brilliant. Friday afternoon, celebration. Well done on this, well done on that. And a special note of praise goes to Johnny. Johnny's made a £15,000 fee this week as a direct result of a peer reference. Johnny, could you tell the team how you did it and how did you learn that technique? So otherwise things just become mainstream. One person is using that technique and the others, they may have been cynical, but the power of peer learning, when someone says, that's the technique I use, you see people pick their pens up then. You see people take note, and then the others then follow suit.
Yeah, no, for sure. And as well, what I've always found, going back to the point I made earlier, is if I've just done that and I've just done that placement, and then you come to me and say to me, Jeff, where'd you get it from? I've done it from a peer reference, and then you tell me to teach other people how I've done that, I'll get better at it.
Yeah.
And I'm more motivated. The hope comes again. I reignite that hope, and then from the hope comes the willingness, and the willingness comes the action. The action comes the success. So
well, you've spoken some very, very wise words there. And Aristotle, who, if you Google Aristotle quotes, there are many of them from that wise man from ancient times. He said, the purest knowledge of your art is an ability to teach it. So there's a lot of power in what you're saying, So if somebody's been trained, get them to run the training session. I mean, those weekly sessions I did get a little bit of resistance from time to time. Mike, what's the training session on today? Oh, it's about objections when headhunting candidates. It's about, winning business, blah, blah, whatever it is. Oh, I'm very good at that, Mike. Do you mind if I dip out this week? I've got a client I need to deal with. I say, well, actually, I'm pleased you said that, because I want you to run the session. You're really good at that. So I want you to facilitate the session. And, because people will give a little excuse sometimes, but if using the Aristotle principle, the purest knowledge of your art is an ability to teach it, that person then is actually reinforcing their own knowledge and sharing their own excellence. And that little tip I've just given, by the way, lightens the load, because you get people who are quite natural at this sometimes. And therefore the manager now or the director has someone else who can facilitate those sessions.
For sure. And I suppose if you're a billing manager and your back is up against the wall, because that's usually where it is as a billing manager, and you've got someone who you're trying to bring through, it's a really empowering move that you can make to lead that person in the right direction, isn't it?
You can identify future managers by giving them bite-sized chunks of responsibility. And why do most people not do this? You know, there's one company I was speaking to recently, and they're talking about you know, whether they need to hire a manager in. They're struggling. They don't have enough more senior expertise there. And I said to them, well, are you giving enough responsibility to these junior people? And they weren't. You know, just give them a little bit of responsibility, you know, and because management isn't just about billings. You know that at a more mature level in business, it's about organization. It's about following through on actions. It's about measuring things. And some people have got that more natural capability to do that. So if I delegate, you know, organization of the weekly training session to a person and they're not good at it, it's a sign to me they're not going to be a good manager. So you can actually start to make your life easier and get a bit more of your time back by utilizing the team around you and giving them a little bit more fulfillment, as you said as well.
That happens a lot more at scaling businesses when there's like not always, but if they're like backed by like private equity companies and they've got a hit headcount, or maybe they've just got like an MD who's like really hell bent on hitting a particular number of staff or whatever. But you'll find that happens a lot more in those kinds of companies where it's like, right, we want you to build this team, and then this team needs to build its own team, there's like quite a lot of momentum. And what you'll find that these kinds of businesses is that these rookies within a year sometimes they're up and billing well enough, and they've got one or two people underneath them, and that's growing. Right. And one thing I've learned from being in this position of speaking to loads and loads of different recruitment directors is I'm constantly being surprised about how I'm absolutely certain I've been sold over the years that something can't happen, and then someone goes and does it. And then that model now is a model, if that makes sense. And yeah. I'm like the conduit between loads of different recruitment directors. And I always say to them, if I'm having a chat with you and I see something really good that you're doing, is it all right if I speak to a couple of my other clients and tell them this is working really well? And I've been really, really surprised actually, especially seems to be a lot more communion in the recruitment industry from the pandemic, but pre-pandemic, not as much. Post-pandemic, kind of everyone's very, very open to saying, yeah, Jeff, look, this is really working for us. If you've got any other clients that you feel it can benefit from, let them know this strategy or model or whatever. And it's good because, again, I'm learning all the time for free. You know, every time I pick up the phone, really, really weird industry, rec to rec, really weird industry, because you're either ahead of someone or behind someone in your journey. So I'm always either learning from someone or showing someone the way, if that makes sense. So yeah. It keeps me sharp, mate. It keeps me sharp in this.
Well, I think that's a great outlook. And a friend of mine had a meeting with Nelson Mandela many years ago before Mandela died. I mean, what a special thing that is, isn't it? Or what it was. And so he met Mandela at a trade function in South Africa. And Mandela came over to him and he said he was a very, very warm man. You know, he took his hand in both hands. Thank you for coming to share your wisdom with people in South Africa. That's what he said to my friend. And my friend was a very smart guy. And he said, can I ask you a question, Mr. Mandela? He said, of course. He said, what's the best thing you've learned in your life? And he paused and said, everyone's my teacher. Which reinforces your point, I think. You know, everyone's my teacher. I thought, wow, you know, you can learn from anybody. Yeah. You can learn. My friend said it on business development meetings. He took that on board, and he said normally he'd sit in reception reading the Financial Times or whatever newspaper was sat in reception, and he'd go to the receptionist and talk to them. What's it like working here? And then in his sales pitch, you know, he's then meeting later on. He's got some knowledge from reception because he's learned something from them, you know. So I think you're absolutely right, and that more collaborative nature of the recruitment industry now is I think it's a special thing.
Mm.
You know, there's a lot of negativity from, I don't know what's the word, candidates who get slightly mistreated by a rogue recruiter or something. But I think we're the good guys. You know,
Sure.
we're the mediators, aren't we? We're the deal makers, and we're in between.
Mm.
And most people in recruitment that I meet, I enjoy their company.
Likewise, and I think it's a good gauge of what you do if you can speak to a child and tell them what they do and see how they feel. Like if I say to my kids, they say to me, I've got a 15-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 20-month-old." And my 15-year-old said the same thing that my 8-year-old has said to me very recently. It reminded me. And they said, "Dad, what do you do for what is your job?" And I said to them, "Well, my job is to get other people jobs." And they both have had quite a similar reaction. And it was like, that's really good. That's a good thing, isn't it, Dad? Because my wife tells my kids, Daddy's at work, because I'm at work a lot. Daddy's at work, but it means that we can go on holiday. Or Daddy's at work, but it means that we can whatever, right? And so my kids are, touch wood, lucky enough, but well, not lucky enough, but smart enough to be able to work out money comes from working hard, right? But they also understand that you need to have the opportunity, because I feel extremely privileged to be a recruitment consultant. I genuinely do, because I know that I work really hard, but also labourers work really hard and they do not get a lot of money. But in this game, you write your own check. Like you genuinely can write your own check. And
Yeah.
so I love this business for sure. And what I really liked was my kids both of them basically turned around and said the same thing. You're helping people to feed their families and take their families on holiday and all that sort of stuff. And I love this industry. I
Yeah.
think
Well,
this is a brilliant game.
linking that back to, training again, Jeff, the um, younger people can achieve special things,
Mm.
really special things. I mean, the football manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, he was interviewed on YouTube, and someone asked him, Sir Alex, should you treat young people differently in today's world? And his answer was, oh, yes, absolutely. You've got to be harder on them. You can imagine whether with his persona, So are people too easy on induction? And what are you actually training them on? So I was with a company recently, and they said, oh, this is our induction plan, Mike. On day one, we're teaching them how to use the CRM. I'm thinking, hold on, it's a sales job.
Yeah,
Teach,
sales job.
teach them how to sell on day one.
Yeah.
Teach them attitude on day one. Teach them work ethic, hunger. Give them stories and anecdotes of people who've done special things. And by the way, capture the stories and anecdotes of directors on video and put it into your learning management system. I was non-exec of an IT recruitment company, and they had, I did 1 million. I was meeting them for two of them for dinner. One of them did 2 million, one did 1.8 million, and I was the puny 1 million. And so they were 30 minutes late, by the way. I went to their office and they came out and said, Mike, sorry. We're just closing deals. I thought, well, it's a good excuse, yeah? So we went off for dinner. But I was non-exec of this company, and the principal did 2.25 million on his own, gross profit, by the way.
Nice.
And I when I was non-exec, he did a one-to-one with a young rising star in the business. So the young rising star was, I think, 18 months experience, and I then debriefed him after the one-to-one with the owner of the company. And I said, how was your meeting? He said, oh, it's fantastic. I couldn't, wow, it was so exciting. I didn't know he did those things. I've learned so much from that meeting. I just want to copy him. So I went to the owner and I asked the non-exec question. I said, do you realize the impact you've had on that young man? He said, no. He just wants to copy you. He thinks it's phenomenal. He said, oh, brilliant. So I looked him in the eye and I said, when was the last time you did that? And his answer was telling. Not as often as I should do, Mike, which of course means I hardly ever do it.
Yeah.
We understand why people don't do it. They don't find the time to do it. you know, in a growing business. So I said, we've got to get you on film. Now, you know, we're on a Zoom meeting now. It's quite easy to do. You know, any company could invest 30 minutes once a month and put 10 questions together to the key players in that business. You know, what's the key reason for your success? Blah, 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 whatever those questions are, and cut them into 6 to 10 3-minute clips, and put them into your learning management system. So that's what we help businesses to do. You know, now you can just do this for free, or you can put a bit of polish on them and put some brand on and edit them, and, you know, and so on, if you want to do that. But at a base level, do it free. If you think of that 2.25 million biller, if he'd have done that years earlier, what else would that have, you know, achieved? And I think this conversation is quite interesting for me because I'm very passionate about it. But it came from, you were talking about work ethic, Jeff. And so how do you inspire that younger person with that work ethic? Well, maybe it's these kinds of things that we're talking about now. Just light that spark in them. You know, where you realize it's real. When I first came to London from the north of England, you know, I saw these jobs advertised at huge salaries in sales. And I thought, really? No, nobody earns that kind of money. I had a limiting belief, you know, so people have limiting beliefs, and you can quell that with a proper induction, well thought through, and inspire people. And they think, I'm going to go for this. The mindset changes and the work ethic changes. And that's why, you know, induction, planning it is so important.
I think that was, I mean, I picked that up there. That I feel like that was extremely profound. And I think that a lot of questions I ask a lot of people are, you know, what would you think makes a good recruitment consultant? And I would say that not all of them, of course, there's not everyone, but I would say like a real common story, right, is people that have got limiting beliefs. Maybe they've grown up a bit hard. Maybe they had it a bit hard. Maybe they weren't, you know, their mum and dad weren't driving fancy cars and all that, right? And I think that recruitment's a great leveler. And they've come in and maybe they've took a job in sales because they might not have the education to do much else, or they're not 100% sure, or whatever, right? A lot of people, some people growing up feel like sales is going to be their ticket. For me, I felt like sales is my ticket. You know, I want to be a salesperson. That's what I wanted to be, because I just, you know, the movies I was watching growing up, they were standing there, nice suits on the phone, making loads of money. And I thought, oh, I definitely want some of that. But I also did have extremely limiting beliefs. And I know a lot of my peer group I've grown up with now, being in the game for like 20 years, if now we're old enough, we can realize we did have actually, most of us had really limiting beliefs. And I like what you mentioned about inspiration, because I feel like we was all motivated, but we all hit an upward trajectory when we was working with people we was inspired by. And all of a sudden, hang on a minute, why not me? Why not me? That question of like, why not me? Why can't I do that then? If this person's doing it and I can copy what they're doing, why won't I yield the same results? And you know, again, I feel like I'm really falling in love with recruitment again on this. You've induced that in me, so thank you. Not that I've fallen out of love with it, but with me, I go through my day and I don't realize how grateful I am sometimes. I don't realize how lucky I am to be in this position, to be able to pick up the phone, make some money. That's a really, really, really unique position. I think that it's quite unique to the sales industry, but especially recruitment. Because as well with recruitment, you're look, of course you're going to get calls for people telling you to fuck off. That's fine. It's part of the course. It's like over a period of time, it's kind of like, hey, I've got one. Again, that matters what environment you're in, doesn't it? Right? Because if you're in like that friendly and inspiring environment, it's laughed off and it's on to the next one kind of thing. But I think most of the time you can make a real genuine difference in the person's life who you're dealing with. Whether that means that you're going to reduce their stress massively by filling the holes in their business that are causing them to lose sleep or patience or tolerance, whatever, it all spills out into your family life, don't it? I don't know many people that can leave their woes at their front door, right, if they're stressed out at work. So whether it's leaving that stress by, you know, you've got a contract book, you've got a really good group of contractors, and you can, you know, send in superstars that are going to save the day, or you're candidate driven, like what I mainly am, and you can actually speak to somebody and find out what's holding you back. What in your role is holding you back? What would you like to do next? Why aren't you doing that now? You know, what are you good at? What are you not good at? What do you want to do? And then finding them that inspiring environment where they're going to slot in, and you know that they're now going to hit that upward trajectory, or they're going to continue acceleration on that upward trajectory, and you're changing lives in that way. And I don't want to sort of like say that, oh look, I'm changing lives. Everyone in this game, what we do makes a difference. I genuinely believe that. I've seen it many, many times.
But you're totally right. And, you know, questions are the answer. And you just illustrated that perfectly with a series of smart questions there, Jeff, that, you know, they unlock it. They unlock the sale, don't they? And, you know, the rejection, it's like, I never felt like I was failing, even though I was failing. What I mean by that is, you know, if you're in conversations and you get beaten by a prospect client who pushes you away for whatever reason, I was still punching the air because I'm an opportunist and I would get one thing from the conversation. And if you teach this early in induction, or you imbue it in existing people, you get great results. So I'll give you an example, yeah? So I'm on a call, the client says, look, I've heard what you said, I'm happy with my current suppliers, but it's just really not for me, but thanks very much. No problem, Mr. Client. Thanks again for your time. By the way, just before I go, I'm doing a survey on interview best fit. Can I ask you one quick question? Yeah, okay, go on then. Out of every, say, 10 people you interview, how many would you say are not right for your needs? Oh, I don't know, 6 out of 10, but look, I've really got to go now. Yes, I'm punching the air because I've got some business intelligence now that I can use separately. So, you know, the first step might be my tailored email follow-up. Again, this is a training issue, the power of the written word and templates and so on. You know, dear X, thanks for your time earlier today. It was interesting to discuss the issue of 6 out of every 10 people you interview not being suitable for your positions. In our business, we've put the following measures into place, including A, B, C, and D, which significantly reduce the incidence of that, free up management time and result in better quality talent for the business. If you'd like to explore this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I've got something to hook into for the next conversation. So I think, you know, teach people that get one thing from a conversation and it is a success. And therefore, I felt that the majority of my calls were a success. You know, I'm going to get some information from a candidate conversation. I'm going to get some information from a client conversation that's going to take me somewhere. You know, I taught opportunism to one, it was a construction recruitment company, actually. And I taught them how to get candidates when negotiating on fees. Now, how common is this, Jeff, in your experience? Okay.
Not common.
So I did a session on rate negotiation. Now, nobody wants to discount. But in this particular instance, it wasn't a huge discount that the construction recruitment company was being pushed down to, and the roles were juicy and fillable. And they tried some fee defense tactics, and it came to the point where they either did a deal or walked away from the business. So the recruiter used this technique. So, Mr. Client, you know, the reason we charge these the fees at that level is because of the amount of service we do, and we do X and we do Y and we do Z. I'm not saying I can do something for you on the fees, but hypothetically, if I could, what could you do for me in return? Well, what is it you want in return? Well, I'd like you to put us formally on the preferred supply listing. Yeah, I think we can do that. And my stock in trade, as you know, is high quality candidates. So you mentioned, Mr. Client, that you interview quite regularly. Have you got candidates that you've interviewed that are not suitable for you that you could alert me to? And the client said, yeah, I think I can do that. And after the call ended, they got a spreadsheet sent to them. The client broke GDPR, but that's what they did. And they sent a spreadsheet with a list of names and mobile phone numbers on there of people that interviewed. They made 5 placements from that list. Now, that's not a mainstream technique. You know, it's not. And you're not going to use it very often. My point is, sometimes you can do unusual things, by asking lots of questions that, that unlock, situations that other people don't do, So, and again, going back to your point about this being a wonderful job, the fun of it for me was the opportunism. I felt, what's the word? I don't want to sound arrogant, but I felt smarter. I felt a little bit smarter that I managed to get something that a lot of other people may not get. And that going home to your family at the end of the day, where you've had a few downers, you might have, a problem happened. I'm still feeling good. I've got information from calls. I've managed to negotiate and pull something from the negotiation. So even though I may not have made money that day, I'm going home feeling good. And these things are all teachable.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that there's, and I think that there's more. Maybe it's because of the circles that I'm spending a lot of time with recruitment trainers, obviously, because I'm doing this series. But I also do. I am a bit of a believer that what you think about, you do bring about. But I feel like the general consensus is a lot more positive around the mindset of who you can bring into recruitment now, because I feel like what's happened is 2022, everyone needed to do 360, right? Or not everyone, but a lot, it shifted that way, right? Or they had to be really good at business development. And there was a lot of people that had been in account management or, 180 delivery for a long period of time. And you speak to directors and they've said, look, I'm probably going to have to get rid of all these people because they're going to have no chance. They're all going to sink. And actually, coming at the end of 2023, loads of them are still in place at those businesses. And the difference between the ones that have stayed and ones that haven't stayed usually seems to be appetite for the job, not skill set, because the skill set they've implemented and they've taught these people, and actually they've come good. And a lot of the conversations I had with people was just reminding people that they are still selling. They're still selling. They're selling a job. So now it's just the other way. They're still approaching a call with an objective. Just change the objective. It's not that dramatic. It can easily
be.
Well,
that again is a big training issue for experienced 180 recruiters. The candidates are the engine of business development, and 180 recruiters are talking to candidates. So teach them candidate-related business development techniques. Teach them how to talk to a candidate and find out who they report to, how many people are in their team, which recruitment company placed them there, and so on. Teach them how to get interview leads properly. Where have you been interviewing? I've been told not to say. Teach them how to deal with that with better technique. Teach them senior candidate tracking, as we chatted about earlier. Teach them how to ask candidates questions like, which companies would you like to work for? What can you do for those companies? Who, if anyone, do you know in those organizations? Teach them questions like that. Teach them how to ask better questions around the candidate's key achievements. Teach them how to get candidate exclusivity if the candidate is a superstar and they're highly marketable. So, teach them verbal referencing. I mean, verbal referencing is a soft sales call. Now, of course, it requires skill and you are going to get objections, but it's not difficult. Ring, ring. Can I speak to John Smith, please? Speaking. I'm calling to ask for your help in connection with Mark Davis, who used to work for you. That's not a difficult call to make. It's a sales call and there's quite a bit of skill involved in it. So I think a lot of that, even recently, Jeff, and it saddened me. I spoke to one recruiter and he said his business development techniques involve sending emails and cold calling, and I'm thinking, well, this is 2023, it's obviously 2024 now, but I'm thinking, why are you doing that? Why are you not using better techniques? Why are you not doing social selling, to attract inbound leads? But he wasn't. Why not? He'd not been trained how to do it. He'd not been inspired how to do it. And the lazy default mechanism was just do some calls.
And
Send
that's
some.
and as well, and that's the toughest right. That's the toughest way. The email rate and
Yeah.
the rate of response on email, and I mean, depending on when you're going to be listening to this, if you're going to listen to this post February, that's changing. Google and Yahoo are putting massive bans on bulks sending that of emails. That's going to kill specking, or not. Maybe not kill it. I'm sure we'll find a way, but it's going to make it a lot harder. Cold calling is the hardest thing to do in this game. I really like what you say. You know, you lead one call into another, you get referrals because it's like leading that commercial awareness. And again, I feel like, again, to make things a bit more exciting, sometimes I feel like I'm hunting down a lead. You know, it's kind of like I've got a thread here. This guy's given me a thread, and then I can speak to that person and get to them. Before you know it, I've got a job or a candidate or something good's come from it.
Well, I've got a question for you, Jeff. On, you interviewed a lot of recruiters over the years. How many of them are using the smartest business development techniques, do you think?
I think a lot of them are using some of them. It all depends where they are in their career. If you wanted like a number, I don't know if I'd be able to. I could hazard a guess, and I could probably say it's about 50-50. I'd say there's 50% of the people that I speak to, they work off of commercial intelligence and they go down that route. They get a lot of referrals. A lot of it is like, who's your favourite manager? Oh, John's my favourite manager. And then they ring up John and say, I've just been speaking to Paul. Paul said, you're the best manager he's ever had. So I wanted to give you a call, that kind of stuff. And they're leading one onto the other. And I'd say probably the other half of people, depending again on how they're trained, are sitting there absolutely caning one phone call after another on a list of people, saying the same thing over and over again. But I think that number increases the longer with longevity. So when I'm speaking to people that have got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, whatever, they don't do much cold calling anymore. They do more of the. I'm not saying cold calling is not smart. You've got to start, right? And I think that it keeps you fresh. I do a little bit of it every day, not a lot of it, a little bit, right? But apart from that, these people that are in a nice flow and they're earning nice money have kind of defaulted into that way because they're just dealing with the same clients again, and then that client moves to another business and they're intelligent enough to think, well, there's another opportunity there, or they go out on client meetings and then there's someone else there and they get in with that person. Much like, the different ways you're saying to do things without a computer, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that of what you just said there about as people get more mature in the job, they're using more of the techniques. That takes it back to training again.
Oh, yeah.
Why not, imbue people with the best techniques early, and hold them to account for the knowledge and sharpen that skill on a continual basis. That's a management issue. It really is a management issue to drive it. And another key facet of this, which is also training related, is managers are often measuring the wrong KPIs. CV sends, first interviews, okay, you might want to measure those things. Why are they not measuring senior candidate tracking, for example? Why? I'm not going to go into fine detail on it, but another big one that I find people aren't doing is client referrals. It's a sales industry. Every sales book ever written that I've read has got a chapter beginning with the letter R for referrals. Now, to be fair, some recruiters are on to candidate referrals, but tiny fractions are manufacturing client referrals. So we teach recruiters how to manufacture client referrals, and the majority of people wait for them. So they think that a recommendation is a referral. It's not. A recommendation is somebody rings you out the blue. Hey, Mike, I've been speaking to John Smith, one of your clients. He recommended you and he said you're really good at what you do. That's not a referral. A referral is when I proactively get the name from one of my clients or contacts and use that to my advantage. And there are many ways to get referrals. One of the, it's like, say you go on a client meeting and you're in reception and the client comes down in the lift. You get in there and you press floor 17, and on the way up, what do you talk about? And most recruiters, it's a bit of small talk, and they probably do ask the right question, but they never connect it. So in that lift, what you're talking about, how's your weekend, nice offices, you're probably going to say, how long have you worked here? And the person says, I've been here for a couple of years. All right, where did you work previously? Well, I worked at Big Target Company Limited. they're my way in to Big Target Company Limited at some point. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to go into the fine detail. There's a specific strategy around it, but generating client referrals on autopilot is actually quite easy. It's about sales ability and asking the right questions. And again, that's something you can measure. So, it's a lot of development is management issues, and, a lot of managers are weak at it. So I do quite a lot of it. My personal work in the training piece is more with directors and managers and upskilling them in some of these strategies so that they can maximize the performance of their people.
Well, that's leadership, isn't it? Leadership that's the difference, isn't it? If you can show your team that you're well invested and you're putting your time and effort into getting better, then again, it inspires, I believe, in the right kind of person, that inspires them to want to do the same thing because they want to follow in the footsteps of the person who's doing the best, don't they, usually?
Yeah, for sure.
So I know you've been in the game a long time. I've got this thing in my head that I think that recruiters bill roughly about the same money as they did 20 years ago. Right. From seeing, I'm not talking about the unicorn people. I'm just talking about generically across like the median number. Right. So on average, I would say the majority of consultants that we speak to, these are retcons. This is not dealing with seniors or principals or anything. This is, recruitment consultants, right? They do between 10 and 12 grand a year, right? A month, sorry, a month, right? You're looking at 10 to 12 grand a month. That's the kind of average number of billings that we get, right? That come through the door. And from my memory, and I've checked this and I've looked at certain statistics and that sort of stuff, that's kind of been the same thing in the whole of the 2000s, where people were doing between 10 and 12 grand. Now, obviously, recruitment's advanced, the economy's advanced, rec tech's advanced, loads of stuff's advanced. Why do you think that, considering if that is the case, why do you think that the people billing the same money now as they was 20 years ago?
I think there's an acceptance of it. By the way, you are correct.
Okay, I did think so.
10 grand a month seems to spring to mind 20 years ago. It feels about right. So I think firstly, there's an acceptance that it's okay. If you want a high performance culture, you've got to stretch people, induct them in the right way, hold them to account for the learning, fast track the knowledge, and properly manage them. There's a big weakness in our industry, Jeff, and it's management. And one-to-ones are not well done. In fact, they're often not done at all. It's criminal. So how do you manage performance if you're not sitting down and analyzing the performance individually with your people? So I think there's a management piece there, weekly one-to-ones, measuring the right activities. So, if they're not doing the right activities, you're going to end up with that 10, 12 grand a month. If they are doing the right activities, you've got a chance. So if they're doing some of the smarter strategies, and the manager should be held accountable by the directors to ensure those are being done. And that's a training issue for managers. They don't know, a lot of them don't know how to do effective one-to-ones in a coaching style. So a lot of people hate one-to-ones because they feel they've been told off. The only thing you seem to learn from your manager is work harder, and you're already working hard, So what about, so Dave, you had a good week last week. You got your metrics on candidate referrals. You got your metrics on senior candidate tracking, but you're a bit low on your client meetings. Talk me through that. What got in the way? They should be having a coaching-led session, looking at performance and key metrics that drive success. So firstly, identify the metrics that take you to success. Look at what's reasonable and benchmark that. Make sure it's a reasonable target and not unobtainable. And hold people to account for it. And if people aren't achieving their targets, hold them to account properly. Put a bit more pressure on. Retrain them, and so on. But I think one of the main reasons is people are going on less client meetings now. You've got to meet more customers. Okay, there's lots of Teams meetings, but you can maximize Teams meetings more. And there's a big training piece around that. I mean, I use AI in my Teams meetings or Zoom or whatever tool you're using, and it transcribes every word that I'm saying and every word that the participants are saying. So it's a really valuable training analysis tool now, where I can sit down and I don't have to, watch the whole recording of the meeting and cups of tea clinking and whatever it is. I can actually read the transcript and I can spot where things have been missed. So you've got a training tool there that could rapidly improve it. So, and the theme of this session is training and the weekly development. If you're only getting 10 to 12 grand a month from people, you're probably not doing some of the things I've talked about, and you're almost certainly not sharpening the skills of your people every week. So take those on board and you'll get more money.
Thank you very much for answering that question so thoroughly. I really appreciate it. So in the essence of what your mate asked Nelson Mandela, I'm going to ask you a very similar question. Out of your many years as being in this industry, what would you say is the key thing that you've learned to help you to be successful?
Opportunism.
There you go. And that's been a general theme of the show, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the big difference between someone billing 10 grand a month and someone billing, 50, 100 grand a month.
And I think as well, it's a nicer way. My experience is it's a nicer way. If you can lead one call off of another, everything becomes softer, everything becomes a bit nicer. You enjoy things a little bit more. And as you say, it's more of a game. Because you've got to do this. You've got to. This one thing about this game I've learned: you can't do it part time. It's very, very difficult to. Obviously, if you're a one man band and you're just trying to earn a few quid on a monthly basis, you can do what you want. But if you're part of an organisation and you're trying to get somewhere, it's a graft, and there's no way out of it.
Well, as you were chatting, going through my mind was about this opportunism. It's easy. That's what I was going through my mind.
Mm.
Then I'm thinking, actually, it's not. It's easy in one sense because one thing flows from another if you know the best techniques and the best questions to ask. But, I'm thinking of a call 15 minutes before the Champions League semi-final and my team was in it, and I'm talking to a candidate and I don't want to be doing that call, I don't want to be doing it. And after the match started, I'm still on the phone. The next day, I chase an interview lead and I make a placement, and it's like you know the best techniques, but you've also got the grit or the stubbornness, whatever that, stubborn's often perceived to be a bad word, but it's a stubborn determination to do it. And it's to do the right thing, and the right thing is ask that question. Ask that one more question that's going to take you to where you want to go, even when you don't want to, and it's painful.
Oh, and that's it, isn't it? Like the majority of the success that you'll find is on the other side of the uncomfortability. Like asking, you've talked a lot about referrals, and I love referrals. I think it's a really easy way to get in with things. I would say a lot of placements I make, I don't know the exact numbers. I'm not great with that with ratios and whatnot, but I would say more than less come from referrals, right? But again, I've become quite used to asking for referrals, and sometimes I don't even realize I am asking for referrals. It's just popping up in conversation. But then a lot of people will hesitate at that because I think, like, from a mindset perspective, it's kind of like, why are you asking these people for things? Why are they going to give you that? They're scared of putting themselves on the line and getting rejected. They feel vulnerable by asking someone for this. So again, it's about having that grit and determination of, like, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think as well, Jeff, teach them the softness. You used that word earlier and it's on the money again. Teach them the soft way to do it. And that's about having the good graces and the politeness and professionalism and the timing of asking the right question. Hey, thanks, John. Really enjoyed chatting to you. Have a great weekend. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Actually, John, just before you go, I wonder if you might be able to help me. That's a teachable thing. You can actually teach those phrases where, and the word help is one of the most powerful words in the English language. We've all got an inbuilt intrinsic desire to want to help for some reason. Of course, if you might ask for help in the street one day and people push you away, but if you do it sincerely, people are open-minded, and in sales, the word help is a weapon, so it's teachable, as most of these things are.
And did you know that psychologically, if you help me, you trust me? Trust is built off of you helping me because you feel like you're in control and therefore you trust me. Where if I'm helping you, you have less trust for me because you see me as somebody who could maybe challenge you in some way. I've done a psychologically course and
No,
that came up and I checked
totally.
it does actually ring
I
true.
taught a company better referral strategies. This particular one was on the candidate side, and they did a survey on candidate satisfaction. And after the referral training, the candidate satisfaction went up, which I think mirrors that example you've just given, really.
All right. Well, look, I really appreciate it. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I think that you've probably got better things to do than to sit here and talk to me all day. But I really, really appreciate you. And thank you very much for your time. I'm sure anyone listening to this has got loads out of what you've said. If you want to hear more from Mike, he's very, very vocal on LinkedIn. That's where I found you. Some excellent posts with loads and loads of good content on there. And you can always pop over to recruitmenttraining.com. Thank you very much.